Welcome to Paul's Passive House. The images that you're looking at right now are of my rental property. I decided during one of my turnovers that I would improve this property's efficiency. So I installed reflective barrier and 3.5 feet of fiberglass insulation. Now I got this insulation used. The reflective barrier I bought new, but this took a fair amount of time. And what's so interesting to me is how many people ask me why. Why would I do this? What could I possibly benefit from improving a rental property? Now, the benefits are multifaceted, but the reason I did this is because it's the right thing to do. Making this house more efficient is good. It's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for humanity. It's good for my tenants. And of all the people in the world, the only person that's going to make this house better is me. I'm the only one that can actually do this. There is no government agency that's ever going to help me do anything like this, at least not in the United States. There's not going to be any program that's going to incentivize me to do this, not in the United States anyway. And the quote incentives, unquote, that we do have in the United States are mostly bullshit. They don't actually pay you off in any way. Sometimes you might get a rebate on your taxes, but you still have to spend astronomical amounts of money to do these improvements. Now, obviously, I circumnavigate some of that because I get a lot of this stuff used and I do a lot of the work myself, but I'm not going to get anything from the government for doing this. All of the burden of making this house more efficient and a better place to live is going to fall on my shoulders. It's up to me, and I want to be a good person. I want to look back on being a landlord as a net benefit, something I did that was positive, something that was helpful, something that really provided a service for the people, not just the people that lived in my house, but the neighbors and the people around it. Now, sometimes people ask me, well, what's your return on this investment? And there's a convoluted way that I could describe the return. I mean, eventually, efficient homes will be worth more because people will start to wake up to the advantages. And eventually, because I have such a low electricity footprint and carbon footprint, this house is going to become sought after. But the benefit is just knowing that my tenants have a nice, comfortable home to live in. And the pictures that you see here, this isn't all the work that I did. I did the same thing that I did to this attic. I did this same process in the crawl space. I just did it slightly differently. I installed polyiso sheets on the foundation. I installed a barrier down there between the ground and the crawl space. And I put in fiberglass insulation under the floorboards and piled it around on the plastic that I laid down as the barrier. Essentially, I have an R value of 120 in the attic, and I have an R value of about 65 in the crawl space. Now, my tenants are already reaping the benefits. They've already talked about how much they like the house. It's less drafty, it's more efficient. They like that. I'm also installing heat pumps at this unit, and while I'm running into delays right now, that process is going to hugely benefit the tenants. Heat pumps are incredibly efficient and provide very comfortable heat at a low price. But the responsibility is mine. If I act and think like one of these guys that I see on YouTube that talk about climate change, and they talk about how it's a governmental issue and how you have to vote, and that's how you're going to change, that's how we're going to solve this, I empathize with them. That's correct, but that's not how this is going to change. It's going to change by individual effort along with societal and collective effort. We can't just vote this change in. We don't have enough time. Maybe in the 50s, we would have had enough time to solve this, but now we have to act. The time to wait is over. It's now time to actually do something. And any percentage increase in efficiency you can add to your home is a benefit. And this, working in the attic and working in the crawl space, those are the two places, if you look on any of the graphs and any of the data, these are the two places where inefficiencies are their highest. And so this is where I focused my attention. Now, at some point, this house might get new doors and windows, but the attic and the crawl space were the two biggest problems. So let's get back to Paul's passive house. You can see here I am removing the siding and the window trim on what is the north side of my addition. The powers that be, the intellectual geniuses that decided to build this addition, put windows in the absolute worst place possible. They didn't put any windows on the south side of this addition. They put all the windows on the north and the west side, the two least efficient sides of any building. So I'm going to remove these windows and block them, and then add windows to the south side. I'll also be adding a door to this north side. Previously, the folks that built this addition built it as a pass-through through another bedroom. And of course, I hate that. So I'm canceling out that pass-through. I'm actually making a hidden door there, and I'm going to add an exterior door here. If you work on a project like this, you'll dance a fine line between exposing the property and maintaining security. And what I mean by that is you want to take off the siding, obviously, but you don't want water to infiltrate the interior. Now you'll notice here, I've got some rot. This is very common, especially in houses that don't have overhangs and whose windows weren't properly flashed. Now I re-flashed all these windows a couple years back, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and so I was able to mitigate that rot for the most part, but that's leftover rot from years and years and years of no overhangs, poor craftsmanship, poor design, and not properly flashing these windows. And it doesn't help that these windows are terrible. If I had to pick the worst windows ever, they would probably be the windows that I found in my addition. Now, before I started this deconstruction and rebuilding of my addition, I was really sad because it wasn't that long ago that I painted the entire exterior of my house. And that's why you see such a lovely color on my exterior. I did it myself, of course. I have a paint sprayer, and so I taped it off and painted it. I did it in about 2 weeks. It took a while to clean it, and I had to wait for the right weather, but I was able to paint the exterior, and I was really sad that I actually had to take all this off and I wasn't able to save this siding. What a pain in the ass that is. Like I was saying though, if you tackle a project like this, you're going to be walking a fine line between taking things off and demolishing parts of your house and allowing the elements into your house. So obviously you don't want, for instance, snow and rain to enter this addition through that window. So before I take that window off, I have to be really careful and I have to plan, how am I going to cover that hole during this process? Taking a closer look at this rot, you can see the hole is much bigger, and there's an actual hole in the side of my house. Skipping ahead here a little bit, I put some wood over that window, and that window has actually been uninstalled. And now I'm going to spend some time taking down the gutters. I need to remove these gutters because I need to redesign this space. And I also need to make sure that my air and water barrier go all the way to the top of the roof line. That means taking off the gutters, taking off the fascia, and incorporating the zip system all the way to the roof line. Now, I'm not a tinsmith, so I'm not great at working with metal, and taking off gutters is not really as easy as you might think. Although I did get lucky, these gutters were put on with spikes. It's an old-timey way of putting on gutters. They drive large nails through them, and due to the fact that they're so old, these spikes just basically fell out. Now, removing the siding in this corner to reveal the inside corner was very nerve-wracking. I had a fair amount of anxiety, not only for what I might find in that corner, because I suspected there'd be rot, but I don't want that corner to be exposed. Where a roof comes together like that is one of the most prone areas of your house to experience rot, decay, mold, and stuff like that. And I was really worried about what I might find in this corner. Now, this hardboard siding is really feeble and easy to break. And I couldn't help but think to myself as I was breaking them across my stomach like that I am all that is man. I just break siding across my own stomach. Now here I'm adjusting some of the drip edge so that I can actually get to the gutter. The gutter's held on, like I said, by spikes, but it also has a fair amount of screws in it. And whoever installed this gutter put quite a few screws, so it took me quite a while to get all the screws out from under the drip edge. I also was trying to be careful not to damage the gutter. I'm gonna try and reuse this gutter if possible. And so I wanted to uninstall it as carefully as possible so that when it comes time to put it back in, it's actually usable. Now, once these gutters come off, the clock ticks. The last thing you want is for water to be dripping down the side of your house, especially water that's accumulated from your roof. And you especially don't want that water pooling or collecting near your foundation. So the fact now that these gutters are off makes me very nervous. And I have a very strict timeline now in order to get those gutters back on. That is my number one priority, is get the gutters back on and get water directed away from my house, and especially away from my foundation. Now, while I was up on the roof, I decided to cut down this vent. There was an old vent from my old furnace, and it was really tall for no reason. So I took off 3 feet of it, I think. Now, obviously, I don't have a furnace anymore, so I don't need it. I also took the time while I was up there to check my roof deck and see if there was any water or condensation, and there wasn't. So far, so good. The roof that I built in the attic above the main footprint of my house has maintained its dryness. Now, as I take off the fascia board, I'm going to be inspecting the drip edge further. Because I found that rot near the window, I was worried that maybe the water was getting behind the siding due to this drip edge being faulty. But as far as I could tell, the drip edge was in pretty good shape. My suspicion is that that water got behind the window at the top of the window, and that happened before I did the recaulking, repainting, and reflashing of that window a few years back. Now, as I work in this inside corner here, I'm taking a lot of time to inspect it and to see where water's coming from, if anywhere. And the good news is that when this house was re-roofed a few years back, they did a pretty good job. And so far, there hasn't been too much water collecting in that corner. Now you can see here, I've taken off the sheathing that was above the 4x8 sheets, but behind the gutter. And that means that now there's a lot of cold air moving through my addition. It's above the drywall, in the ceiling, but below the roof deck. Once I expose that area and allow that air to move through there freely, it's going to change the dynamic of the interior of my house. And sure enough, since I've removed all that, it's been much colder in my house. Now this rotted wood is giving me a fair amount of trouble. I'm trying to find a place that I can get a pry bar in to actually pull away the wood, but it just keeps falling away every time I try. So I decided to change up my tactics. Prying this piece off was just not working. So I tried a few different ways to get this rotted wood off, and I couldn't find a way that was really all that useful. What I ended up going with was what I called a two-hammer method, where essentially I pound the claws of a hammer into the wood underneath the nail and then pull the nail out from the wood. That turned out to be the easiest and best way to get nails off of this plywood. As you can see, I'm using two hammers there, and I'm just hammering the claw of one of the hammers into the wood under the nail and then removing the nail. Eventually, the wood becomes loose and free to move, and I can either pry it off or just pull it off. Now, I'm trying to measure this corner here to make sure that I have a good fit for my new sheathing. You see me measuring and looking at this corner because due to the fact that my zip system sheathing is 2.5 inches thick, that corner is actually going to be a problem. Initially, it was built with the plywood, and that plywood overlapped perfectly. But even if it didn't, it's only about, 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch to make up. But 2.5 inches is a big gap. So I had to figure out how I was going to install the zip system so that that corner would be covered. And you'll see later how I accomplished this. Right now, I'm adding some cleats so that there's more surface area, more wood for me to attach to when I put up the sheathing later on. Now I'm canceling out this window, so I'm going to build a stud in this window to connect to. And because of the position of this stud and the corner needing to have 2.5 inches, and I wasn't exactly sure, I made a double stud so that I would have plenty of wood to connect sheathing to later on. Now I'm wrapping up for the day. I'm going to put up a piece of zip system and cover up that window with some plywood, and I'll be back. There you can see that gap that I'm worried about. That's a big open space, and I need to be able to put trim and siding here. So I have to figure out this corner before too long. But that's enough work for today. We'll see you in the next one. If you'd like a free energy efficiency consultation, please email me at paulspassivehouse@gmail.com.